Chief Tony Chuka had everything a man could want. He was one of the richest men in Nigeria, living in a grand mansion on Banana Island. His success story was one people told to inspire young dreamers. Born in Aba to a poor family, Tony had hustled his way up from selling spare parts at Arera Market to owning one of the largest oil and gas companies in the country. He wasn't just rich, he was powerful, feared and respected. His life seemed perfect, but deep inside, Tony was far from happy. Tony's wife, Angela, was beautiful and classy, the kind of woman who turned heads wherever she went. They had been married for 15 years and had 3 children, Anthony Jr., Nicole and David. Angela, however, wasn't the loving wife she once was. Over the years, her focus has shifted from her family to her lavish lifestyle. She spent more time abroad than at home, attending fashion shows, shopping in Paris, and posting pictures of her glamorous life on social media. Her priorities were clear. Appearances came first. The children weren't much better. Anthony Jr. was spoiled and reckless, always getting into trouble and expecting his father's money to bail him out. Nicole, the second child, was a party girl who cared little about school. David, the youngest, was quiet and kept to himself, but he barely knew his father. The Chukwuma household was run by a team of staff, including drivers, gardeners, cleaners, and cooks. Among them was Ada, a young house help from Enugu. She had come to Lagos to work after her father's death left her family struggling. At just 22, Ada was carrying the weight of her family's hopes. She sent most of her salary back home to pay for her siblings' school fees and her mother's medicine. Ada was hardworking, respectful, and very skilled in the kitchen. Angela began noticing things that made her uncomfortable. "Tony, I hope you're not letting your eyes wander where they shouldn't," Angela said one evening after dinner. "What are you talking about?" Tony asked, pretending not to understand. "I've seen the way you look at that girl," Angela said, her voice firm. "Don't embarrass this family. If I hear one rumor about you and that house help, I'll throw her out myself." Tony brushed it off with a laugh. "Angela, you're imagining things. Stop being dramatic. Ada is just a house help." Angela wasn't convinced. She even considered firing Ada, but the girl was too good at her job. For a while, things stayed quiet, but Tony, feeling lonely and frustrated, began to seek her out. It started innocently enough. He would visit the kitchen late at night when she was cleaning up. He would ask her about her family, her village, and her dreams. Ada was polite but cautious. She didn't know how to handle the attention, but she couldn't outrightly dismiss him either. One evening, Tony came into the kitchen and found Ada singing softly as she cooked. Her voice was sweet, and the song reminded him of his mother's folk songs from his childhood. "You have a beautiful voice," Tony said, startling her. Ada dropped the spoon she was holding. "Ah, Chief, I didn't see you." Tony smiled. "Don't stop because of me. What's that song about?" It's just a song from my village," Ada said shyly. "Well, it's beautiful," Tony replied. From that night, Tony became bolder. He began staying up late just to chat with her after everyone else had gone to bed. Ada didn't know what to make of his behavior, but she didn't want to lose her job too. She needed the money desperately, so she played along, hoping it would blow over soon. But it didn't. Over the weeks, his advances became harder to resist. Ada, alone and vulnerable, eventually gave in. Their affair was a secret, hidden from the rest of the household, especially Angela. 3 months later, Ada realized she was pregnant. She felt sick, not just from the pregnancy, but from fear. What would Tony say? What would Angela do? She tried to hide it for as long as she could, but eventually she had to tell him. One evening, she knocked on his study door. Ada entered, clutching a folded piece of paper. "Chief, I'm pregnant," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Tony stared at the paper, his face frozen. "Pregnant? Are you sure it's mine?" "Yes, Chief. You're the only one," Ada replied, tears streaming down her face. Tony stood up and paced the room, running his hands through his hair. "Do you know what you've done? Do you know how much trouble this will cost me? Angela will kill me. The press will have a field day. This will ruin my reputation." "But sir, I didn't plan this," Ada said. "I didn't want this to happen." "Neither do I," Tony blurted out. He turned to her, his voice cold. "You need to leave. Tonight. Take whatever money you need and go. I can't deal with this right now. Ada was stunned. Leave? Where will I go? That's your problem, Tony snapped. Just go. Heartbroken and abandoned, Ada packed her belongings and left the mansion that night. She found a small room to rent in a slum and survived by selling sachets of pure water on the streets. She gave birth to a baby boy, Chijioke, and worked tirelessly to care for him. Tony tried to forget about her, but guilt weighed on him. He couldn't sleep at night, haunted by dreams of Ada and the child he had rejected. One day, his driver came to him with unexpected news. Chief, I saw Ada today, the driver said hesitantly. She was selling pure water at the junction, with a baby. Tony's chest tightened. He couldn't ignore it any longer. He decided to see her. The next day, Tony drove to the junction. He spotted Ada under a tree, balancing her tray of sachet on her head, while carrying the baby on her back. She looked thinner, exhausted, but still carried herself with quiet strength. Ada! Tony called out as he stepped out of the car. Ada froze, then turned slowly. Her expression was a mix of shock and anger. What do you want, Chief? Haven't you done enough? Tony's eyes fell on the baby. Is that my son? What does it matter to you? Ada said bitterly. You made it clear we didn't mean anything to you. Tony's voice broke. I was wrong. I want to make it right. Ada shook her head. You think you can just show up and fix everything? I don't need your pity. We are fine without you. But Tony wouldn't give up. He visited her every day, bringing gifts and offering to pay for housing. But Ada refused. It wasn't until Chijioke fell ill with a high fever that she finally accepted his help. Tony rushed them to a private hospital, sparing no expense to save the boy's life. Slowly, Ada began to forgive him. When Angela returned from one of her trips and found out about Ada and the baby, she exploded. You brought them here? Into our home? She screamed. They are my family, Tony said firmly. I won't abandon them again. Angela packed her bags and left, filing for divorce soon after. The scandal cost Tony his reputation and most of his fortune. Investors pulled out and he was forced to sell his mansion and move into a smaller house. Despite losing almost everything, Tony found peace in his new life. He spent his days working to rebuild his business and his evenings playing with Chijioke. One night, as he watched the boy sleep, he turned to Ada and said, I've made so many mistakes, but I'll spend the rest of my life making up for them. Ada nodded, her voice soft. We've all made mistakes, Chief. What matters is what we do next. Tony smiled, knowing he had lost his wealth, but gained something far more valuable.